Hey, welcome into the Stinkin Truth Podcast. I am Mark Schlereth alongside my partner, Mike Evans. Mike, how you doing, buddy? Good to be with you.
I'm doing good. And boy, it seems like, every week we say the same thing. We just add another win to their total. The Kansas City Chiefs now 8-0, but still not blowing anybody out.
Yeah. It's really interesting. One of the questions on Breakfast Ball this morning was, are you concerned about the Chiefs and their lack of blowing people out, right? That was like one of our questions today. And I was like, no, I'm concerned for the rest of the league because they're winning games and not blowing anybody out. I mean, like that was the first time that Patrick Mahomes hasn't thrown a pick. He threw a ball left-handed to get it out of bounds. I mean, the guy is a absolute freak show. And they're not blowing anybody out. And then all of a sudden, hey, look at Hopkins, how great he looked last night. Oh, hey, Hunt looks rejuvenated, refreshed. Oh, by the way, all of a sudden, Travis Kelce looks like Travis Kelce again, right? They'll probably go and trade for some great defensive back or something and even bolster their roster even more. So I am concerned for the rest of the league because nobody can take advantage of the fact that they were down and Patrick Mahomes was throwing interceptions and yet they were still winning games. And then last night, a perfect opportunity for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to come into Kansas City and steal a victory away. They drive down the length of the football field, 71 yards, 10-play drive, score with 27 seconds left. And I think, of course, you're going for two, right? Salt it away. Yeah. Put salt in the wounds. Beat the Kansas City Chiefs. And what happens? They kick the extra point. And I'm thinking to myself, my former teammate, Todd Bowles, what are you doing? Like, this is not hindsight being 2020. This is go for the victory, man. Like, you're on the road. Don't play for overtime. Don't give Patrick Mahomes another opportunity with the football. What have we learned over the course of time since Patrick Mahomes has been running roughshod through the league? If you give him the ball last, you lose. And to me, there was a lack of a thought process here because you take that long drive. At some point, you cross over the 50. You start to discuss with your analytics guy who's up in the booth, like, all right, like what are the odds are? What should we do? You would think that you would have that conversation about going for two, right? The other thing is you haven't run any 2-point conversions. So your best 2-point plays are still in the bag. You haven't called them yet. So you have your best 2-point conversion play. You've got your regular offense from the 3-yard line. If you want to use that, whatever personnel group has been, you've been efficient with, whatever you've been successful with, you've got all those things at your disposal, and offensively, you've been orchestrating. You just put a great drive together. You've got karma, you've got momentum, you've got whatever it is you have it right now. It's never going to be any better. And oh, by the way, Baker Mayfield's all balls. Like that guy just competes. So I'm like, you're in a perfect spot to say, hey, what the hell? If we win, like we're either going to win this game or we're going to lose it. And if we don't convert, nobody's going to go, wow, you guys should have just kicked the extra point and gone into overtime. So Patrick Mahomes could have whipped your ass. I don't know if you saw the coin flip, but the coin flip, the Kansas City Chiefs win the coin flip. They call it bam, it's heads or whatever it was. And Baker Mayfield just goes, oh, you can see the whole energy on their sideline. Baker Mayfield goes, well, we just lost that game. We lost it on the coin flip because Patrick Mahomes is going to shove it up our cans. And sure enough, that's exactly what went down.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more because, my role, fan, media guy, I'm going to be the smart ass, right? I'm going to be the one that's just going to look for an excuse to jump all over you and second guess you as the coach. You go for two in that situation, you're not going to hear a peep from me. You're 2.5, 3 yards away from winning the game. One play. You win the game. Instead, you go into overtime. You invite all the different variables that go into overtime. It doesn't make any sense to me.
By the way, Todd Bowles said in his post game, he goes, yeah, we thought about it, but it was raining and we wanted to play for overtime. Wait, so you thought the rain might affect the 2-point conversion play where you just scored from the 2-yard line? The play before, you thought the rain was only raining down there at the goal line? It wasn't raining on the 30 when you got the ball and went 10 plays, 71 yards, or the 29? I guess like the rain. like it's the old saying, don't piss down my leg and tell me it's raining. Like the rain had nothing to do with your decision to play in overtime. You just decided to play in overtime. Why? Who knows? I mean, I have no idea, but you decided to go with my injured team without Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We want to go head to head with the Chiefs, who are healthy, and just traded for D-Hop, and he's playing his ass off. And oh, by the way, Travis Kelce just had the best game he's had all season long. And oh, by the way, Kareem Hunt has got fresh legs because he was sitting out for the majority of the season. Like, really? So that was your decision? And oh, by the way, arguably the Kansas City Chiefs have the best defense in football, or one of the top 5 defenses in football. So that one, the whole I wanted to play for overtime, or I didn't want to play in the water or in the rain, that's just foolish.
Well, Detroit played in the elements at Lambeau and didn't seem bothered at all. And I know you are a big Lions supporter. You really like what they've built there with Dan Campbell. But, boy, Mark, this looks like a team that plays well at home. It looks like a team that can travel. It looks like a team that can play in the elements. I mean, this Lions team, off to their first 7-1 start since 1956. Boy, they're checking all the boxes, aren't they?
Yeah, and I love Dan Campbell comes out in his post-game press conference and just basically says, how do you want to play? Like, where do you want to play? It doesn't matter to us if we can't play in the rain. We play in a dome. Who cares? We'll play anywhere. We'll travel to Salmon, Idaho and play in a parking lot. It doesn't matter to us. Like, we'll play you anywhere. And that's the thing about them, man. That, like, they can beat you any way you want to get beat. You want to play the finesse game? We can play the finesse game because we're that talented. We're that skilled. Oh, you want to play the bully game?
Yep.
Shoot, we'll bully you up now. We got the best offensive line in football. We've got a 2-headed running back monster in Montgomery and Gibbs, probably the best tandem of running backs in football. We haven't even had our big play element because he's been suspended for a couple of games, Jameis Williams. So I mean, like, how do you want us to be? We got Laporte at the tight end position. Like, we can beat your butt any way you want to get beat. And oh, by the way, we lost Aiden Hutchinson. So what do they do today at the trade deadline? We're recording this right before the 4 p.m. trade deadline here on the East Coast. What did they do? Oh, they went out and got Zadarius Smith from Cleveland. And, Zadarius has 15 solo tackles. He's got 5 sacks right now on the season. But he's one of those guys, and this is the most important thing to me. He fits the culture of the Detroit Lions. And I think that is incredibly important, Mike. He fits the culture. He is a hard worker. He'll play the run. He's a hard-nosed football player. That's what he is. He may not be the most skilled guy anymore at coming off the edge, but that dude is a football playing Jesse. And now he's part of the Detroit Lions. So that one potential weakness, because their pass rush has dipped a little bit since Aiden Hutchinson has been gone, now all of a sudden we've addressed that. We've got a guy who's a proven veteran, a guy who fits our locker room, a guy who has played the blue-collar style of football in Baltimore. He played it there and now in Cleveland. Like, that's what this guy does, and he fits exactly who the Detroit Lions are. And I just think it's a brilliant ad by Brad Holmes, their GM, by Dan Campbell, their head coach. Fits perfectly, and it fills the need they had for that position.
Nothing has felt right with the Dallas Cowboys going back to August, September, even in training camp. It's just like something felt off, and now the misery just keeps piling up. Dak Prescott's going to be out a minimum of 4 weeks with that hamstring injury. I mean, are we at a situation right now? Is your advice to the Cowboys, to Cowboy fans watching right now? Hey, man, just tank, write this season off and start all over?
Well, I don't know about tank. I mean, I would sell, but they're a buyer. They just got Jonathan Mingo from the Carolina Panthers, who really, was a 2nd-round pick, but really hasn't had any success. Of course, there's been, the quarterback situation there with Bryce Young and everything else. So he hasn't really produced. But like, what makes you think all of a sudden he's going to come to Dallas and produce or do something for you? Like that to me signifies we're in this for the future. Mm-hmm. Like, you're basically saying, if you're the Cowboys, hey guys, we're not going to win this year, but here's a young receiver that hasn't developed yet. Maybe he's good. Here's the other thing for the Dallas Cowboys. Like, where do you go from here? Because Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones aren't going anywhere. They're the ones that are required to put your team together. That's not going to change. And Mike McCarthy's probably not going to be head coach next year. So, I mean, like right now, what do you do from here? And remember this offseason, you mentioned this, and I think it's really key. Like they couldn't get a deal done early. They shuffled their feet and they waited on CeeDee Lamb, right? It took a long time for CeeDee Lamb to become a part of that team, missed the training camp. Then the day of the first game of the season, I believe, they signed in the locker room Dak Prescott before the first game. Like, what are we doing? Like you knew, like you're going to get him signed. And the whole thing about signing a guy a year early as opposed to signing a guy a year late, setting the market a year early because everybody's going to usurp it. And then all of a sudden it's going to become a decent deal, right? So like nothing seemed to work. They didn't address their free agent needs. I mean, Derrick Henry made it apparent that he wanted to go to Dallas. Well, they didn't sign a running back. They signed Zeke Elliott. By the way, I just did a Tennessee game. You know who's a really, really good player? Tony Pollard.
Oh, yep.
He's a really, really good player. And oh, by the way, he didn't practice last week because he had a foot injury, and he came in and rushed for over 100 yards and caught the ball, and he motions out of the backfield. I mean, the guy's a really solid football player. You know what? He'd look good. He'd look good in a Dallas Cowboy uniform. Oh, what? We can't get that guy. I mean, Micah Parsons comes out and says, we need help on the defensive line. We need another linebacker. We need some defensive help. Think Jerry Jones listened to that? No. He said, I'm all in. I'm not going to do anything, but I'm all in. Like, I'm all in. When it comes to the Cowboys, we are on full steam. He's like Jerry Jones is the captain of the Titanic. Full steam ahead. There's no icebergs in this water, you know, all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. So I just like Dallas is done. They're spent. They're in cap purgatory, and I just don't understand. They just don't have a plan.
Let's get back to some winning teams. Buffalo, 7-2 before the season began. You know, we were talking about, has there been too much changeover with the Bills, and has maybe their window of opportunity closed? Boy, right now, were these subtractions, additions, and all that kind of thing? I mean, did they actually bring back a better team by losing players that we thought might hurt them?
I really think they did. I think they became less dependent on their quarterback and more dependent as a football team. And I think that's a legitimate, that's a really, really good thing. And, you know, what I mean by that is when you have, you know, a lot of talent outside the numbers, you got to feed that talent.
Yep.
And they just feel like a much more unselfish football team. And it always felt to me, Mike, from a coaching standpoint, that when it came to Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills and Sean McDermott, it always felt like they'd be in these close games and they had been balanced. I'll go back to their game against the Kansas City Chiefs in the playoffs. They're a balanced football team, and they're really beating up the Chiefs early in that game. And then all of a sudden the Chiefs do what the Chiefs do, and they make some plays and they come back and they tie it or get the lead or however it went down. And then it was all of a sudden it was like push the chips to Josh Allen and go, Josh, go win this game for us. Go. We're going to quit coaching. And this feels like a different version of the Buffalo Bills. Yes, Josh is still incredibly important, but they're valuing running the ball. They're valuing being balanced. They're valuing spreading the ball out to multiple receivers. And this is a better version of the Buffalo Bills. I do believe Josh Allen threw his first interception last week. The first interception last week, a guy that has had turnover difficulties at times in the red zone and fumble. His first turnover of the season was last week. I mean, that's saying something about balance and about a change of philosophical approach as an offense for Buffalo. So I just think they're a much better football team. They got Amari Cooper at the trade deadline. You know, they're unselfish. They run the ball. They're more balanced. Their offensive coordinator, I think Joe Brady, I think it's helped him out considerably to not just have to hang the whole thing on Josh Allen and go win us football games, Josh. And I think they're a better football team because of it.
Here in Denver, we were focused on Broncos Ravens. So having a chance to really watch Baltimore closely, Wow, Mark, what a performance. What a flex by the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, 280 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, a perfect quarterback rating. Derrick Henry goes for over 100 yards, a couple of touchdowns. Zay Flowers, big day receiving, 140 yards plus a couple of touchdowns. I know this is a team that's carrying some postseason demons around right now, but man, if there was ever a year that the Ravens were going to break through, boy, it seems like they've got the team to do it this year.
Yeah, they have such an unbelievable formula on the offensive side of the ball. And now defensively, they've had some issues. You know, they were going into that game the worst rated pass defense in all the National Football League. But part of that is, you know, they're so good on the offensive side of the ball. And because they score a lot on the offensive side of the ball, they make you kind of one-dimensional. And you got to throw the ball against them. And so, you know, then if you have a lead, you're going to play, you know, you're going to slough off on defense, play the chains, you know, make them throw it underneath. So you're going to compile some empty stats, some empty yardage. You know, that's going to happen. So that's part of it. But listen, man, they have a formula right now. Their first 2 games where they lost the first 2 games of the season, they were throwing it 35, 40 times a game, whatever it was, right? And we're all screaming on television and on radio, you got to run the ball. You got to run the ball. You got to run the ball. You got Derrick Henry for a reason. Remember, Derrick Henry in game 1 had like 15 carries or 14 carries or something like that. Dude, they have found this formula. Give it to Derrick Henry, run the snot out of the ball, and, you know, and limit the number of passes you have to throw to maybe, you know, 20, 22, 24. I mean, I think last week I think Lamar was 16 of 19 for 280 yards. Like, they've got a great formula right now. And as long as they adhere to that formula where they're going to run the football, run the snot out of the football, set up their play action stuff, get their one-on-ones on the outside because you're bringing that 8th man in the box. I'm telling you, it's just going to work. And they're killing it right now. Offensively, they are a juggernaut, and they're so big and so physical. You know, they're going to line up in those 2 tight end formations. They've got Derrick Henry at 6'3", 250 pounds. That can outrun any DB in the National Football League. So they give you this perception of, we're just going to bully the snot out of you, and they do that. But because they bully like that, so many times they get the one-on-ones on the outside. And teams are trying to play that. And Lamar gets that one-on-one on the outside, man. He has been deadly. So, and all that said, Mike, and he's the leading candidate probably for the MVP and everything else. All that said, none of that matters. He can win the MVP. Yep. Whoop-de-doo. He can be great, and they can win they can be the number 1 seed like they were last year. They probably won't, but they could be. Whoop-de-doo, doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is winning the AFC and representing the AFC in the Super Bowl.
Yep.
Because everything else to them is a lost season. And I love the expectations. And those should be there. Those should be the expectations of the Baltimore Ravens. It is Super Bowl or bust. Nothing else will do.
All right. Well, speaking of bust, my picks last week were a bust. Terrible.
You're correct. You're correct. You were 1-2 last week.
You were
after gloating because I was 1-2 the week before, and you know, and you were 2-1, and you just like, here comes my comeback, like a bull in a china closet.
Yeah, I know.
And of course, I went 3-0, and you went 1-2 again, and it's just my picks right now. And we'll do this later on in the week, but I am 18-8-1.
If people followed you from the start, you'd be making them serious bucks.
18-8-1. Yeah. Of course, if I had to put my own money down on my picks right now, I'd be 8-18-1.
Right.
If I was actually wagering on my picks. So anyhow, that's the way it goes.
Hey, by the way, show off that haircut again of yours. That's look at that.
Yeah, karma's tough. I made fun. of the Raiders owner, Mark Davis. I made fun of his haircut, and then I went into the barbershop and. I have a lot of Russian barbers. I don't know what the deal is in New York. I got my eye on you Russian barbers in New York. But I went in and said, hey, just the number 3, I just want it trimmed up. I just like, I don't like it to look like it was cut, right? Because I'm on TV every day. I didn't say that to him, but that's what I said. I said, I just want it trimmed. I don't want it to look like it was cut. Right. Number 3, he goes, oh, 3, not short enough. I go, wait, dude, this is my hair. That's what I want, 3. And he's like, smelling a potato vodka, I'm sure. I didn't really actually smell his breath, but he might not have been Russian, Eastern European though, for sure. Block country, block. Don't trust it.
Yeah.
And then he just goes, and I'm like, okay, I guess we're going shorter than a 3. Like it was my hair. And so anyhow, such is life. Yeah, it's pretty short, Mike.
Wow.
Pretty
on TV,
but it'll grow.
On TV, did they put like a side-by-side, you and Jack Nicholson, Colonel Jessup, and A Few Good Men? I mean, I see no difference.
You want me on that wall.
Right,
you need me on that wall.
Right, I order the Code Red. There you go.
All right. Hey, thank you so much for following us, for subscribing and doing all those things. We appreciate you here on the Stinkin' Truth podcast. For my partner, Mike Evans, I am Mark Schlereth. We'll be back with you later on in the week.